Yeah, but it's great to connect. Great to meet you. Thank you so much. And I want to begin our journey into your good work by asking you this. It's a question that I've tried to put away, but it's just been too big. 5 years ago, this pandemic was going pretty hard, changing our lives. How did you get through the pandemic of 2020, and how is it radiated into your world today?
Oh, wow. So the pandemic was a turning point for my coaching business and for my ability to be a part of the wider community here in Shanghai and China. And this is twofold. So being in China when COVID hit was a very different experience from being anywhere else in the world when COVID hit.
Yeah.
We were sort of the early testers of it. And being here when COVID first hit, and when it hit in Wuhan, but not in wider China so bad. But we did learn certain techniques on how to protect your household. So when it hit in the U.S., a lot of people reached out to me and said, "Colin, you went through COVID. What should we be doing?" And that allowed me to create I want to say, a 30-minute webinar where I say, here's how you wash your hands, here's how you want to do A, B, and C. And one of my old colleagues reached out to me and said, would you be open to doing a PSA, a public service announcement video, maybe 30 minutes? I said, no. What I will do one every day one every day for 30 days. So I got myself and some other coaches here, and for 30 days, we became the COVID coaches, and we would have a lesson in every day about making it through this time. So those 30 days, 30 videos allowed me to support people globally as they and their families went through COVID. So the first part was me being in that support role. And then fast forward, I want to say almost 2 years later, when the lockdown came here in China and Shanghai, which was very different. Literally for 3 months, for the first month, you couldn't leave your apartment. You couldn't go to the backyard. You couldn't go to the front yard. Literally, you couldn't do that. Then you could go, in here, think about apartment complex. Second, we were allowed to go outside, but we couldn't go out the complex. And to us, that was great because we could walk around, jog around, do things like that. And
Yeah.
apartment complexes here are humongous. But during that time, again, myself and other coaches, we decided to do it differently. We gave free coaching away. And in those 3 months, we coached over, I want to say almost 150 people for free. I myself coached almost 75 people. And that's what helped me really become a better coach because you're dealing with different personalities, different challenges, different issues. So for me, COVID sort of helped me really um, times X times 10 my ability to coach and support the community. And now I'm more looked at the community as somebody who was there when everybody was going through a tough time. So it really helped me be there for my folks outside of China. And then more importantly, be here for the community during that lockdown, which people still haven't gotten over.
Yeah. That's amazing. What a great story. Let me ask you this. If we were to get to the heart and soul of what you do on a daily basis for a living, I put you in front of a bunch of 12-year-olds at career day. One of the kids in the back of the room is like, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" What's your answer to that child?
I'm a coach.
Yeah.
Because the child will say, Coach, where do you coach? Football? I would say, no, I coach dreams. What's your dream? And
Yeah.
the child would share the dream. And I say, what if you need help accomplishing your dream? The child would say, I want to be a rock star. Okay, what if you need somebody to help you do it? Oh, that kind of coach. So I always say, even for adults, I just say I coach
Yeah.
because you want to hook them with what kind of coach.
Yeah. Let
Yeah.
me ask you this. What did you want to be when you were 12? What was your dream career job?
When I was 12, I wanted to make sure I was starting my football league. I was not thinking about dreams and careers. I was thinking about how can I be better than football than my brothers.
Yeah.
I was thinking I was fully embrace. Luckily, I was fully embracing childhood. It wasn't until I probably later in life I thought about what I really wanted to do. It wasn't until my freshman in college when I figured out what I wanted to do. My sister graduated before me. She was in finance, but got a good car, made good money. So I went to school as a finance major. Within 2 weeks, I changed to IT because I was more interested in IT. So I was wanting to get a job doing IT, but never really had that. I want this sort of career.
Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about the foundational elements. Where were you born and raised? What was instilled in you to get into coaching, to want to be in football, to get into IT? How did that get planted?
Yeah, and there may not be a straight connection to all of
Yeah.
those. So my family is from Jamaica,
Okay.
and they went from the tiny island of Jamaica, where it's warm every day, to Canada, where it's not warm every day, but it's
Yeah.
cold for a long time. You're in Canada, so you know what cold is, right?
Oh, oh
It's
yeah.
cold for a long time. We then immigrated when I was about 8 years old from Canada to the U.S. So I tell people I'm a double immigrant to the U.S. And one of the things that stood out. Um, People talk about immigrant mentality, right? And it's real. Immigrants coming to the U.S., we are ready to get we busted a bus to get to the U.S., and we're going to make it work. So when I first moved there, it was more of when everyone accomplished, work hard, work hard, work hard, and we didn't have PTSD, post traumatic slavery disorder, because the impact of when I first moved to the United States, that's when I was told I'm black, don't go here, do this, do that. Because it was always as long as you work hard, and there were no limitation on what we can do. In the US, there's these perceived and deep rooted limitations to what black people can do. So we didn't have that. So it was like everything was open. So a lot of times I would try to help my other African American friends remove their limitations as well. And that's what got me first into wanting to be a motivator. And I think that the first influencer was pastors in church, how they can get up there and speak and motivate. And I always say, you know what? That's what it is. I want to be a motivator. So going back to the other questions, if there was ever a career I wanted to come to, it was a motivational speaker. And that was my later in life aspiration, actually. So before I went into coaching, I went into speaking. And that again started because I want to be able to motivate my peers to do more than they think they can do, to do more than their peers think they can do. That answer your question?
Yeah, you did it brilliantly, and I'm curious, how is the environment in China, and how did you get to a place where you moved there?
So luckily in 2000 and from 2001 to 2006, I was working at Howard University. I also went to undergrad and grad, and they have this thing called tuition remission, which means if you work there for 2 years, after that, they'll cover a big part of your tuition. I said, really? Okay, I'm going for it. So it took me about 3.5 years to get my MBA there. And when I graduated, I had an MBA. It was a dual MBA. E-commerce and supply chain. Actually, the first graduate ever to have a dual MBA. And it's interesting because when I interviewed, I said, I'm only interviewing with companies. Well, during the interview, I would tell them I will only go work with companies who can get me out of the United States. Because remember, we were in the US. In my household, it's Jamaica, right? Growing up, it's become more Americanized, but we always had that not be citizen of the world, know the world. There's several ways of doing the same thing. So I always had that desire to not just travel abroad, but to live abroad, to really live abroad and absorb that culture. So IBM, of course, I interviewed great. IBM said we have a leadership program. We can't guarantee you, but it's a very high likelihood we can get you out of the US. And it was a 2 year program. The first 3 6 months positions were in the US. And people say, Colin, how would you pick China? I said, no. They said China. I said, all right.
Yeah.
That's how I got to China in
Uh,
2008.
so talk to me a little bit about inspirations or heroes. Who has fueled you to excel and evolve in your life?
Well, it comes in, how do I say it? When I was younger, let's say high school, I was mesmerized by pastors and how they can get the whole crowd moving. They can get up there in front of a whole people, say things, and you recall that message weeks and months later. When I went to university, I had this goal of being able to get up in front and talk to people. So usually pastors, and I wanted to talk to folks because I was the dumb jock. I'm not going to lie. I was the guy who barely graduated high school. I got to academic university only because my siblings went there, and a wrestling coach fought hard to get me there, and I wanted to change that. So in university, I started looking at who was doing what I want to do as far as motivating. It was people like Les Brown. So Les Brown, Jim Rome, very much impacted my desire to just go from wants to motivate to getting on stage and really becoming a motivational speaker. So I can say those two motivated me back then. The last person who I can say in recent years who I could say really motivated me. Gosh, I don't know if the last few years I've had anybody else. I think it's more now. I try to be a, I try to motivate other, not motivate. I try to inspire others, and be that person who's doing something that they aspire to do or they aspire to replicate.
So in coaching, a part of that process, I would imagine, is allowing people to take risks to get to better places in their lives. When you look back at the timeline of your life, what's the biggest risk that you've taken?
I can tell you to the day. I can tell you to the day. So it was it was late 2017. I was still working with IBM, and we knew for a long time that our job was going to be relocating. My wife and I decided we did not want to go from Shanghai to Beijing. So luckily, IBM gave me a package, and I remember it was sort of in the air, but not really. And then one day, I got a phone call. My manager, Colin, the day has come. This is the official 30-day notice. We're going to. It's not me. It was a whole team, right? So
Yeah.
it wasn't a surprise. And I remember that day telling my wife, I said, "Honey, we got about one more month with IBM, and after that, I'm not sending my resume out. I'm not doing that." And without her knowing what I wanted to do, she said, "Okay." Like, so that day, to me, was one of the most proudest moments because I took the risk. I pretty much burned my ships. Right. I said I have no backup plan, and since then, since February 2018, I've had no backup plan as far as if coaching and speaking doesn't work. I have nothing. So to me, that was one of the biggest risks I took, and I'm very glad I did it. And I tell you, Joe, some days I wake up and say, "What the heck did I do? Oh my gosh!" And I got to resist not updating my resume, but I'm very proud of that risk.
Who's the best coach that you've ever had in your life?
Ooh, by far, ooh, it's a tough one. I gotta say two. I gotta say
Okay,
two.
sure.
The first one was my second high school wrestling coach. My first year, I coached my sophomore year. The football coach was the wrestling coach, but he was just doing it because he had to. He never wrestled. We got a real coach my final 2 years, and that really changed how I believed in myself because I was cock strong before, if you know what that means,
Oh yeah.
but I didn't have technique. So when he came in, it changed overnight. That's when I first learned if you practice hard, you can improve and really be better. So I did very good there. Then my coach in university, a totally different style. He was from Chicago, much rougher. But he taught me a different lesson. He taught me that you're at Howard University academic school. Your most important thing to do here is to graduate. And I was like, wait a second, we're on a wrestling team. So yes, the wrestling's important, but the most important thing to do here is to get your education. So my first coach told me the importance of practice to become strong and skilled. My second coach told me the importance of having a degree. So I look at those two as my most influential coaches.
So when you look at your life and the way so you got your personal life, you have your own soul and your family, but you also have a professional business life. What's your philosophy that you follow, and what do you try to imbue on your clients? What philosophy do you want them to follow on making a balance between all of that?
Well, I can start with my clients. I don't try to imbue any of my views on them whatsoever.
Okay.
It's really totally about what they want to accomplish. It's more me accepting their views, at times giving them different perspectives on their views for them to consider. But rarely will I say, well, here's what I think you should do. Have you considered this? I try to avoid that because one of the big things about coaching is you want to meet the client where they are and help the client to find their own way. Does
So,
that make sense?
yeah, it totally makes sense. Absolutely. And I've heard that a lot in coaching. And it's kind of my cardinal sin whenever I mention, do you try to do this? Because it's not about that. It's about adhering to their dream and what they want
Mhm.
to get done in their lives. So let me ask you this. If you were to have a dream tonight and you ran into that younger version of you, say 16 to 18, getting ready to charge out into the world, and you could give that young version a piece of advice based on the wisdom you've collected throughout your life, what advice would you impart?
So, Joe, I told you I went back, I listened to a lot of your podcasts, right? And I was trying to figure out how to truly answer this question, but I got to answer it my way. So please allow for that
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
I thought about many times, and it may sound a little corny. If I go back and give my younger self advice, it might change where I am today.
Right.
So I don't want to do that. But one of the things I do with my clients and with myself, I say, if you had a conversation right now today with your wiser elder self, this is yourself, maybe 20 years older, has gone through everything you've been through plus more, great mind, great body, in very good shape. What would that wiser elder self tell you is important today?
Hmm.
And that way we look at, hmm, if everything's going great, what would it tell me is important today? So it makes us go ahead and think about today, what advice would we give ourselves today if we were smarter than we are today? So if I look at that and say, what advice would my wiser elder self? Ooh, I think it would just be to continue continue maintaining your mental fitness, and
Yeah.
that is continuing to try to not let life get me too down, not to let life impact me in a way that I'm not able to maintain a calm mindset. Because I work on that a lot, maintain a very very calm mindset. Because to me, that's the most important thing: being able to handle life's ups and downs without letting it cause negative relationships, cause negative interactions, and being able to look at things as it's just a moment. Just about COVID, one of the things that we coached during COVID, this is just a moment. I know it feels like it's not. It's just a moment, and it will be over soon.
That's an interesting way of framing it because it's almost a therapeutic look at it because, in therapy, they always tell you, don't get hung up on the past. What are you going to do going forward? And it's that idea that you're talking about, the 20 years ahead, kind of conferring with that part of you. That's interesting because we will gain a lot of wisdom in that time. So let me ask you this. Let's say you walked into a room with all the clients that you've serviced throughout the years, all the clients you've coached, and you could humanize yourself and tell them a fun story, a magic place you travel to, the best sporting event you ever witnessed in your life, jumping out of an airplane, something like that. What story would you tell that room of people?
Well, I always have a go-to story about the first time I completed a half Ironman, and what the hill taught me. Three, like what the hill taught me each time I were up the hill. But for this crowd of my previous clients, for them to get to know me a little more, I would use my Hong Kong story. The very first day I arrived in China, and this story, Joe, hurt me so deep. I couldn't talk about it for years. Now it's mainly my fault. And I'll be very quick with the story. Land in China. My IBM colleague tells me take the ferry from Hong Kong to mainland. So I'm so out of it. When I land, I didn't even know Hong Kong wasn't a part of mainland China. I thought it was. So when I land in the airport, I get my bag, and the mistake I made was going to baggage check, going through customs. Once you go through customs, you can't go through the ferry. So I was stuck out there, had no idea what to do, couldn't speak the language. I was nervous, big heavy bags. I found somebody to talk to. They tell me to get the ferry, go downtown. Okay, get into a taxi, go downtown. Go downtown. The ferry's closed for the night. I'm by myself. Nobody speaks English. I'm frustrated. I go to a payphone. Um, no coins, right? No money, and I just started banging the phone, right? With banging the phone with the receiver. And a little boy, young man comes up and says, "What's going on?" He speaks English. He gave me his phone. I called my colleague. My colleague said, "Colin, there's no ferries. The only thing you can do now is get a hotel. Get a hotel. I don't even know where the heck I am."
Yeah.
So somebody says, "Go back to the airport and get a car." I go back to the airport. I get a car, figure things out. I go to the border, cross the border into China, get a car, go to the hotel. The guy says 100. I give him 100 US dollars when he was talking about Chinese money, which is equivalent to like $5,
Ooh.
right? So I landed 8 p.m. on December 31st, 2007. I got to my room 4 a.m. January 1, 2008. And I was just so, I mean, in a strange country, I mean, just very frustrated. And it took me, I'm leaving a lot out, but it took me years to be able to talk about that story. So I will share that now in a very happy way about how being frustrated and being nervous and being scared and not doing your due diligence before you go. I thought people spoke English everywhere. No,
It's amazing until you've traveled, you don't realize that, but I know what that fear is like. When I went to Italy the first time, it's where all my ancestors came from. They had the lira, so it was like the 2000 was $1. So you had to kind of play the math, and they always talked about how they'll throw you off if they know you're American. And
Yeah,
just the whole thing. I mean, navigating and getting to the wrong area of town. I remember going to Rome and I got into I just wanted to see the Colosseum and all that before the sun set, but I made the mistake of not really knowing where I was at. So I got stuck in a weird area. No one spoke the language. No one spoke English. It's weird. That is a very
yeah,
jaunting occasion.
yeah.
Um, so let me ask you this. Of everything that you've accomplished, and more importantly, evolved to as a human being, what are you ultimately the proudest of at this point in your life?
I'm proudest of, I don't want to say breaking cycles, because my siblings have been able to do this as well. But I'm proudest of being able to raise my family in a calm environment, being
Yeah,
able to raise my family, my kids, never seeing mom and daddy argue. I'm proud of being able to say, I don't get into arguments with my friends because I've been able to really look at what's important. I'm going to be dying. I told my wife, give me 30 more years. Give me to 82. Give me 82 and I'll be happy because I have young kids. I want to see my kids get married. And I want to make sure I'm here. And part of that is make sure that both mental and physical fitness. So the physical side is okay, but the mental side means being able to stay calm and given an aura of acceptance and peace. So peace of mind is very important to me. So I'm most proud of the fact that most situations that would previously tick me off don't even blip me anymore. I'm most proud of that.
wonderful. So at the end of the day, everyone has this idea of who they think you are, a perception. Family, friends, clients, everyone that knows you, but you run the show. What is your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I think the same thing I just mentioned about who I'm the most proudest.
Yeah.
And the perception of me has changed over the years. I would say every 5 or 6 years, there's a rebirth. Uh, my perception was very negative at some points, um, limiting beliefs in myself. And I still have those. But when I have them now, I know that they're just, I know what they are. I know they're me having some bad days, but that's not really how I feel. So the thing that I perceive myself as being somebody who is much more accepting, very understanding, and very much somebody who strives on being uncomfortable. But when you're uncomfortable, that's when you really find out who you are. So I strive on being uncomfortable.
So if anyone out there is ready to take that leap, they want coaching, they want positive influences, how can they reach out with questions, learn more, hire you, any of the good business?
Yeah, very simple. Go to colincthompson.com. That's colincthompson.com. You can reach out to me. And it's really more about, I like working with individuals who who just don't know where to go next, who don't know, who have the idea, but they don't know how to get started. And maybe in the community, nobody there, they don't know who to go to, right? So I'm there for those who want to get started but don't know how to.
What's the greatest thing about living in China and what do you miss about America?
The By far the greatest thing about living in China is I will never ever ever get shot by a cop. Never. That's by far the greatest thing about living in China. What I miss most about the U.S. Gosh, sitting on the couch with my boys watching football.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have not been in the U.S. for a Super Bowl for an NFL game in 17 years. So
Wow.
sitting on a couch with my friends watching football.
Being in Kansas City, I grew up going to training camp. I love football. Used to play basketball with those guys. I got to know them. We went through 30 years of misery. So the fact that we can sit down to a Super Bowl in Kansas City for all these kids, it's become routine because of
Yeah,
Mahomes. But man,
yeah.
when that happened the first time, I was like, there's no way this is happening. And and my dad passed in '08 and he was a big fan and he used to always joke around with me, if this team ever wins the Super Bowl, the world's going to come to an end. And after that parade, COVID happened. So it really did happen. But anyway,
Yeah.
it's fun, definitely. Man, what an enlightening, wonderful interview. Thank you for your insights, the wisdom, and upfront, thank you for your advice on doing kind of a recap of the week. That was great. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, Joe, thanks for having me. And I'm glad we got together. You might not remember, We started talking about this almost 8 months ago.
Yes.
So I'm glad we were able to do it.
Yeah, and I knew when you would ask me, are we still on? It was like, because it's been so long, it's like, all right, we're right here. We're at the finish line. Are we going to go into the end zone? We did it, man. We scored.
Yeah,
we spiked the football. So thank you, sir. And hopefully this was a good end of your day, and have a great night.
Yeah, thank
Looking to get new clients to your business through cold calling or email marketing? At Agency Y, they envision a world in which small and big companies have equal chances to win new customers in the market. Their purpose is to bring parity and reduce the gap between large and small firms with the help of their cold calling and cold email marketing services. Use the code Joe Dimino 10 at www.agencyyy.org/coldcallingjoe.php or www.agencyyy.org/email marketingjoe.php to get 10% off your first order. This is Joe Dimino of Neon Jazz and Famous Interviews, and I stand behind Agency Y to meet your business dreams.